Four ghouls are in jail after posting a Facebook Live video where they tortured a mentally disabled young man, kicking and beating up the tied-up special needs victim, burning him with cigarettes, cutting his scalp. He's in the hospital after being found dazed on the street. On the video, you can hear the shouts of F Donald Trump and F white people.
Donald Trump, white people, what?
No. Goof.
Yeah.
My sister was trying. Oh, my sister said this not funny, y'all.
So that sounds like a hate crime, yet for some, it's still a debate.
We cannot callously go about classifying things as a hate crime. Motive here matters. If we start going around and anytime someone says something or does something really egregious, really bad and sickening in this instance in connection with the president-elect or Donald Trump or even President Obama for that matter, because of their political leanings, that is slippery territory. That is not a hate crime. Hate crimes are because of a person's racial ethnicity, their religion, their gender, a disability. It is your political leanings because someone doesn't like your political leanings and they do something bad to you. That is not a hate crime.
Translation. These days, a hate crime must always validate assumptions about a bigoted America, meaning the crime must be perpetrated by angry whites who voted for Trump, and then, of course, later proven false. But what of this one? Here, the fiends actually filmed the proof. They're not just evil, but they're stupid. It's black-on-white crime. There's no hijab on the victim, so it just doesn't fit the media narrative. That's why hate crime law sucks. Everyone ends up obsessing over whether the assault qualifies or not, rather than focusing on the crime itself. But evil should unite us in horror, not divide us over classification. And we should really not pay attention to a thug's thoughts and let it define our response. Better that we define ourselves by our own clear-eyed punishment. Because a violent crime is a hate crime, no matter who the victim is. The last point, what about those who watched this on Facebook who didn't call the cops? What do you make of them? I mean, the only silver lining here is that crimes like these still manage to repulse us. But what if they didn't? So, Dana, everyone, after these things happen, they go over the hate crime classifications. Like, does it qualify as a hate crime? Does it not? And it's like, why? Why not just focus on the damn crime?
I've always felt that way about the hate crime legislation, though I was interested in Kimberly's take, which we'll get in a second, because as a prosecutor, there are reasons that you might want to have a hate crime designation. But in this case, I think that the potential for human aggression and depravity is astonishing. And it's moments like this where it doesn't matter to me what color they were, the disability, everything. It was such a horrible, disgusting crime, and obviously all of our hearts go out to the victim and his family. I do think that last night's debate, immediately after the story broke on cable and on Twitter, it just became something like the team sport aspect. So all of a sudden now we have to choose sides about this and whether it's a hate crime, and that becomes the debate. And I think all of the things that the soundbite you played, all of the things that they listed as to these are reasons it would not be a hate crime if you're disabled, if you're political leanings. So the distinction gets completely watered down unless it fits their narrative. Yeah.
Kimberly, can I show you? This is something from the presser today in which they talked about the hate crime requirements.
The bar for hate crime is really high. What specifically are you guys looking at that really raises it to that?
Well, again, I mean, his diminished mental capacity, the fact that they tied him up, the obvious racial quotes that they post live on Facebook. I mean, taken in the totality of the circumstances, the state's attorney agreed with us. I mean, we sought hate crime charges and they agreed.
Just to be clear, was it, you had mentioned the mental capacity, was that the impetus or was that the strong point of the hate crime, or was it the racial comments?
It's half a dozen of one, six of the other.
Right. So Kimberly, my point is like with all of these awful things going on, isn't it obvious that it's just hate? Why do you need the extra?
Well, no, because it is important so you properly classify it, and also involves extra sentencing enhancements when you have a hate crime that is charged. In this case, they have a very solid case. There's a number of charges they can make. They've charged with the aggravated kidnapping. I mean, there's false imprisonment. There's a number of things, but depending on the state, how they specify it and what they call the different violations. These are all felonies. This is a very serious case. If I was a prosecutor, I would charge it as a hate crime. It does meet the requisite qualifications of that particular state in terms of they were very specific in their language. You don't have to even rely on the victim's word for it. You have it on tape. You play that to a jury. Do you think that they're going to be sympathetic to these individuals who have pure hate and evil in their heart? There's a number of ways they can get it, and the officer and the DA specifying that you can do it because of the racial motivation. They made it very clear, white people, and then also Donald Trump, and then the fact that they picked on somebody who was special needs and a disabled man, that also qualifies. So this isn't even a question. For those that are saying this, it's because they don't know what they're talking about, and they haven't prosecuted these cases actually like I have.
So it's basically icing on the cake in terms of punishment.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you need, I think you should go as severe as possible, but they're saying, okay, but hate crime's great because you can add another
Yeah,
layer.
throw another 5 years on it. It's funny how the media has this huge appetite to cover hate crimes, but then when it's black on white, all of a sudden they're not hungry anymore. They don't want to touch it. Everybody knew it was a hate crime from the jump. The only people that didn't call it a hate crime in the beginning is because they didn't want to call it a hate crime. Don Lemon said that this isn't evil. I don't know if this isn't evil. I don't know what is. CNN called it a beating. This looks like torture to me.
Yeah.
And the White House today refused to even weigh in on whether or not it was a hate crime because they said it was an active investigation. Now, how many active investigations has the White House weighed in on? And we know if this was on the other foot here, if these were white Trump supporters doing this to a young black disabled man.
Oh, forget it.
The president would be weighing in, Sharpton, Jackson, they'd be on the scene. Trump would have to answer for this. White America would have to answer for this. But it's just sad because when you hold different races to different behavioral standards, I believe that's more prejudice because that's almost assuming that certain races aren't equal, and that's what I have a problem with.
What do you make, Juan, of the fact that, like, okay, they found out about this because the neighbor called in because those the criminals had gone down and bashed in a door. The people watching Facebook, I still haven't figured out if anybody who watched it actually called the police. That kind of creeps me out. Right?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we, here in New York, I forget the name of the woman who was being attacked, was it many decades ago? And people said, no one came to her aid, even though it was evident. I'm not sure people believed that they were watching something that was actual. No, it was another one. It was even before that, where somebody in an apartment building was being abused, and everybody knew it, and they said everybody could hear her scream, and nobody did.
Yeah, it's an urban legend, though.
Right.
That people, when they found out later, actually did do something. But I get your point.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that people who were watching knew that it was in fact real as opposed to something that was staged. But to come back to join the earlier conversation with Jesse, I don't think there's any question about the hateful and racist nature of this crime. But where I would object is when you say, well, but there's some distinction to be made that if the shoe was on the other foot, if this was a black person being abused by white people, that, there would have been an outcry. We have instances where that happens, and I don't think that there's any immediate, shouting. In fact, there was a case where a black kid was taken by some whites and abused with a hanger. I didn't hear about it until today in the context.
Juan, they barely covered this on the broadcast news last night.
Are you kidding? I heard about this last night, and not only did I hear about it from my friend Greg Gutfeld.
This story was so sanitized.
I saw it
Most of the wire copy didn't even mention the race of the perps or the victim.
No, initially.
Well,
and
Tucker Carlson had this on at 7. It was on right before.
Juan, if you don't think this would be
that's
played
my point.
differently by the media,
about it right away.
This was a racial component in reverse,
I don't
you're out of your mind.
Well, okay, but I'm out of my mind on lots of topics, but I just don't.
Including this one.
I just don't. As I said to you, in reading about this, I see where this had happened to a black kid.
The victim was also a classmate of one of the suspects, and he was held for a minimum of at least 24 to 48 hours, and his scalp was cut open repeatedly. So I think everyone knew this wasn't a joke or staged or fake.
Oh, I don't know that, but what I know, because people watching, apparently, this was your point, Greg. I'm not sure if they understood the horror. Well, I mean that this was real. This was blood.
Well,
this brings a human being.
Commenting on Facebook that this is not funny. This is awful.
This is awful. Yeah. So, but were they comment? But anyway, the whole issue is one of, is this legitimate in terms of people saying, this is a hate crime. I don't see that this needs to be an argument about the hate crime, although I remember with some intensity what happened to George W. Bush when he was governor of Texas, and this fellow Byrd was dragged by some whites behind a truck. And then the NAACP went after the governor at that time and said that he was not sufficiently upset because it was white people who did it. I thought it was totally illegitimate. That was an argument about hate crime statutes. It wasn't an argument about the horrific nature of the crime.
Yeah.
So it gets used on both sides, and I think it weakens us as an American people because, you know, it's not like Dylan Roof doesn't exist going into a black church and shooting up.
Right.
But it's not that then people responded by saying, oh, yeah, that's a reason for more racial hate and racial
Okay,
crime.
well, then are there going to be satellite trucks parked outside this trial in Chicago where there are a Dylan Roofs trial? I doubt it.
Oh, you doubt it? Why do you doubt that?
I doubt it. I'll make you a bet right now this story gets much less coverage than Dylan Roof.
You know what I think, though, Jesse? I think in this era right now of so much racial tension and some of it attached to Trump, it's going to get a ton of attention. Today, it's our lead
I mean,
story.
Dylan Roof killed people. He killed a group of 9 people. So we
try and blame.
I would keep them in a different. As heinous as this is, that was, you know, death.
Right, and to try to tie it to Donald Trump and say that because this is going to be tied to him because racial things are tied to him. I mean, this is outrageous. No, this is a hate crime committed by 4 eager suspects who actually said that they hoped that this video would go viral and held him there for an extended period of time.
But they mentioned Donald Trump's name. That's why I said that that's involved. But one other
I got to tease one.
Oh, go right ahead.
They're telling me to go up.